Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we're tackling one of the most fascinating and, frankly, most misunderstood shifts happening in the tech world right now. We're diving into the messy, high stakes collision between traditional, clear cut software licensing and the modern, incredibly confusing landscape of AI model usage. If you've ever wondered why tech giants are constantly arguing over what the term open source actually means when it comes to artificial intelligence, well, you are in the perfect place. We're going to break down the history, the legal mechanics, and the real-world enterprise risks. Let's get started. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the AI open source confusion, move into BSD and classic permissive licenses, and then look at evolving the standard. After that, we'll see exactly why AI breaks classic OSS, navigate the custom license trap, and finish up with enterprise procurement and OSID. All right, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the AI open source confusion. Right now, across the tech industry, the term open source AI is just being thrown around incredibly loosely. We're seeing it slapped onto AI models that actually carry highly restrictive licenses. And this is creating massive confusion, not just for developers who simply want to build cool stuff, but for enterprise legal teams who have to figure out if these tools are actually safe to use in commercial products. You see, true open source software relies on 4 essential freedoms: the freedom to use, study, modify, and share the system for literally any purpose. Now, we all know cloud APIs are closed, but convenient, right? Local models, on the other hand, offer you absolute control and data privacy. But here's the catch. That label, open source, is frequently being misused to describe what are actually just open weights. Sure, you can download the model, but you absolutely do not have the unrestricted freedom to use it however you want. Which brings us to Section 2, BSD and classic permissive licenses. To really grasp today's chaos, we have to look at BSD in the larger context of classic open source licenses. Back in the 1980s, the original BSD 4-clause license was essentially the bedrock of permissive licensing. It was all about maximum freedom with minimal conditions, but it included this advertising clause that eventually caused a lot of commercial friction. So by 1999, it evolved into the simplified 2- and 3-clause versions. The 3-clause version added a non-endorsement restriction, meaning, you can't just use the creator's name to promote your own derived product. Now, while that non-endorsement clause shares a tiny bit of DNA with modern use restrictions, it is a completely different animal. Why? Because these early classic OSS licenses are purely copyright-based. They govern human-readable code. They are entirely free of the dense contractual bloat and acceptable use policies we see in custom AI licenses today. That historical foundation perfectly sets up Section 3, evolving the permissive standard. Now, what's absolutely fascinating is how these foundational licenses compare to one another. BSD and MIT are universally understood by legal teams. I mean, they are virtually frictionless. They allow commercial use without a second thought. But Apache 2.0, that became the enterprise gold standard because it explicitly covers patent grants. If someone sues you over patents, boom, they lose their license. But notice what all 3 of these have in common. Absolutely none of them tell you how you can use the software. There are 0 scale limits, no field of use restrictions, it's just irrevocable freedom. Moving on to Section 4, why AI breaks classic OSS. We are now looking at a massive structural gap. Classic open source perfectly governs source code through copyright law. It's immutable. Once it's out there forever, with absolutely no use case restrictions. On the flip side, we have the reality of AI models. AI model weights aren't exactly human-readable source code, are they? They're the compressed output of a massive, complex training process. And because their status under traditional copyright law is legally murky at best, AI companies rely entirely on contract-based workarounds. This means they include updatable terms of service, strict acceptable use policies, and sweeping termination rights. This shift from simple copyright over to complex contract law heavily escalates enterprise risk. And that leads us straight into Section 5, the custom license trap. To really unpack this, we need to clearly define open weights. Open weights basically mean you can download the model parameters to run locally, sure, but the license comes with heavy contractual strings attached. For instance, take Meta's Llama 3. It's incredibly powerful and freely available, but its license literally caps commercial use at 700 million monthly active users and completely bans you from using it to train competing models. Or look at Google's Gemma. It has these strict flow-down obligations. That means if you use it in a product, you are contractually forced to make your own end users agree to Google's prohibited use policy. Let's be clear, these are not permissive licenses in the tradition of BSD or MIT. They are conditional contracts. Now, contrast that with true open source AI. The Open Source Initiative, or OSI, recently released their Open Source AI definition, known as OSAD 1.0. To actually be true open source AI under this standard, a system demands full transparency. It requires the public release of the training code, the model parameters, and sufficiently detailed information about the training data so a skilled person could actually recreate it. Crucially, it must grant those 4 fundamental freedoms we talked about earlier: to freely use, study, modify, and share the system without ever asking for permission or agreeing to some restrictive contract. And man, this difference in definitions has sparked a massive industry debate. The OSI is very direct, arguing Meta's Llama license is still not open source. They point out that custom licenses restrict fields of endeavor and discriminate against certain users, like, for example, if your application suddenly goes viral and gets too popular. Therefore, to the OSI, it fails the open source definition. Meta, on the other hand, continues to brand Llama as open source, pointing to its immense accessibility and the incredible impact it's had on the community. It's a heated tug-of-war between purists advocating for unrestricted freedom and corporations trying to protect their massive AI investments. We definitely aren't taking sides here, but it is absolutely vital you know this debate exists when you're out there choosing a model. So, what does all of this mean in the real world? Let's check out Section 6, Enterprise Procurement and OSEI. Navigating this landscape requires a strict enterprise compliance checklist. If you're using an open weights model with a custom license, your legal team has to map every single product use case against the vendor's acceptable use policy. You have to assess if you're accidentally violating a competitor restriction. If you use a model like Gemma, you have to literally rewrite your own customer terms of service to incorporate their flowdown obligations. Look, treating a custom AI license like a classic BSD or Apache license is a monumental mistake. If you do, it will cause massive friction and could completely derail you during fundraising or acquisition due diligence when the lawyers suddenly uncover all these hidden contingent liabilities. So, we are left with one really crucial question. Is the performance advantage of a custom licensed AI model truly worth all that legal overhead compared to a classic, permissive open source alternative? Choosing a truly permissive open source model, one that actually adheres to the original spirit of those BSD and Apache licenses we discussed, completely eliminates an entire class of commercial liability. But then again, sometimes the proprietary or custom license model is just mathematically better for your specific use case. It is a tricky balancing act of risk versus reward that every single tech company is having to navigate right now. I really hope this explainer gave you the structured clarity you need to evaluate these models for yourself. Think about how all this applies to your next big project, and we will see you next time.